What's up, YouTube? It's the Action Figure Grader coming back to you with kind of a mishmash of different topics that I wanted to talk about and how it might affect the graded collectibles industry in the future. Not just short-term future, but probably 5 to 10 years out. And just some interesting information that's popped up over the last couple of weeks that I wanted to talk about. The first one is over at CGC. We all know that CGC was recently acquired by a Wall Street-backed firm called Blackstone Group. And they've got a lot of money now. They got a lot of money to play with. And I guess it was 4 days ago, they announced a somewhat interesting point that I think might hint to what the future of submitting graded items might look like. And that's the fact that I guess there's a esports complex that there's a network of those throughout the country. There's 29 of them. And it's really focused on like Pokemon tournaments and things like that. Magic the Gathering. People get together, nerd alert, and they play Magic the Gathering and Pokemon and things like that. And what CGC has recently announced is that they've partnered with these esports complexes, and people now are going to be able to take their really rare or expensive Pokemon and Magic the Gathering cards, go to one of these 29 different spots across the country to submit them for grading and certification with CGC. So, and that's not really anything that earth-shattering. CGC has already been kind of doing that with various certified comic shops throughout the country. People can get, be a certified or licensed CGC distributor or submitter, and you can go to that comic shop or that, whatever entity it is, collectible hobby shop. As long as it's been certified as an official submitter, you could submit comics to CGC through these shops. So they're just kind of expanding that now into trading cards. But what's interesting to me is that there's now 29 different locations where you can do that across the country. And the other really crazy point I wanted to point out in this video is that CGC, they only started their trading card division fairly recently. The trading card division of CGC, called CGC Trading Cards, was launched in July 2020 and immediately experienced incredible demand for its expert and impartial grading services. In 15 months, more than 1 million cards have been submitted to CGC, both Pokemon and Magic the Gathering. That, to me, is mind-blowing, that in 15 months, they've gotten 1 million submissions for Pokemon and Magic the Gathering. Now, part of that is, there's pent-up demand. People want to get those cards certified, and PSA's got a year backlog or more, year and a half backlog. So by CGC offering this service, they're just basically filling unmet demand, right? And then part of it is prices are skyrocketing for these certified Pokemon cards. We've seen that in my last video where we talked about some of the Hakes auction prices and some of the really rare Pokemon cards that can go for, six figures, $100,000, $200,000, $300,000. So a lot of people who maybe have had these in their collections for a while are, wow, I need to get these graded. So I think that's part of it. But anyway, I think that this, to me, signifies that there is probably going to be more of this type of thing where CGC, now that they have all of this money that's backing them through Blackstone, but Blackstone's they've got many, many billions of dollars in assets, and they can grow CGC as they see fit. And now that CGC has that kind of backing, they can expand into other lines, like they just announced with video games. They're moving into video games. And, they just came out with this announcement about 2 weeks ago saying that they have hired another video game expert, a video game grading finalizer. That's his official title. I have no idea what that means, other than I'm assuming that he's going to be double checking and making sure that what the final grade, what the item's grade is with the junior graders, that it's legitimate and that there's no mistakes there. So that will be interesting. And Matt McClellan is the other senior video game grading finalizer. And so that's what CGC has already done. Almost immediately after they were acquired, they announced that the video game division's opening up, and they're expecting to launch that in 2022, as it says here. And they are hard at work developing its internal database. So they're going to have like a census, a database of all the different. Can you imagine trying to put together a database of all the different video games that have existed out there? That sounds like a nightmare, and good luck on that. But that's going to be interesting to see what happens. They also said they're going to be working on their new holders, and they're expecting their video game holders to be one of the best, if not the best. And we've got WATA, WATA that does it. We've got AFA that does it. So they're trying to do research and develop a video game grading case that will meet or exceed collector expectations on that. So, and then they did talk about that in more detail here on a follow-up post, that they are hard at work on developing that, and they're expecting to launch next year. And it'll be, it's a new item. It's a new segment. AFA obviously has been in that segment for a while, but I think that beyond just expanding into new categories like video games, or like AFA recently announced with, as you can see here, they're moving into factory sealed VHS tapes, which has obviously grown a lot. But beyond new segments, I think where the future gets more interesting is that now that these companies, AFA obviously just got acquired by Diamond Comics Distributors, I think what's a more interesting kind of thought process for the let's call it the intermediate term to long-term growth prospects for these big money backed companies like CGC and AFA. What does it look like 5 years or 10 years from now? And I think that the first article that we just talked about, how they're kind of like getting like little submission centers throughout the country, that will start to take place in the action figure industry. I think, they certainly takes place on a limited basis at conventions and things like that. So if you let's say you buy something at a convention and you want to get it, go ahead and immediately submit it. I know that Collector Archive Services and AFA, they usually have a presence at all the big toy conventions like SDCC and things like that. And you can immediately submit your items right there on site. But those are kind of more like one-time events, annual events, and that goes beyond. I'm talking about something beyond that, something a little bit more concrete and permanent, and not just convention-based. And I think the more interesting aspect will be, are the grading companies going to expand to have different actual grading and encapsulation operations throughout the country? Or are we going to have to, do the typical model where we, ship everything off to, in AFA's case, they're in Norcross, Georgia. In Collector Archive Services case, they're down in West Palm Beach. CGC's in Sarasota, Florida. It just seems like with the money backing CGC and AFA now, that model is really antiquated. And I think that the potential is there to figure out and find experts, and they certainly have the money to do even like regional hubs, whether it's, I think that currently these guys cover the East Coast really well. To me, it makes sense to expand to have something in the Midwest and something on the West Coast. I would think that, especially as it relates to video games and, some of these more digital based kind of, collectibles like that, that you would be able to find experts. Even the comic industry, to a large part, is pretty heavily, West Coast based. I would think that you could find experts and, I'm talking 5 or 10 years down the line. I know that process would not be easy to hire and build out facilities and all that kind of thing, but at some point, it makes a lot of sense for these grading companies to expand and have regional operations rather than just having a central hub like they do now. It just seems so inefficient, and they get so backlogged and so swamped that it would help with the turnaround times, which is, to me, the biggest complaint I have with all the grading companies right now, is just the turnaround times are atrocious. I would think that it would help kind of divide and conquer, so to speak. That if you have let's say you have your expert on G.I. Joes on the West Coast, but all your Star Wars experts are in the Norcross, Georgia office for AFA, that you could direct people. If you're checking out and if you got some an order that's solely G.I. Joes, you should be able to send it to the West Coast and have those turned around faster, instead of having it go to Norcross. So it's just food for thought that I think that they need to look into that. The other interesting aspect is, now that AFA has been acquired by Diamond Comics Distributors, I wanted to talk briefly about them and talk about how big they are, because I don't think I'd really talked about that when I first talked about the announcement. But Diamond Comics Distributors is owned by Jeppy Family Enterprises, and their revenue is $500 million a year. They got 540 employees. This is a big, big company. And AFA, while already apparently pretty well capitalized and pretty well off as a private company, they didn't really have any money problems. But now that they have other people's money to play with and other people's money to expand with, and the most important point, AFA was not in the toy business. They were in the grading business. But Diamond Comics Distributors, they have subsidiaries that are directly in the distribution of toys business. And that business being Diamond Select Toys. So that's one of the subsidiaries of Diamond Comics Distributors and Jeppy Family Enterprises, which owns Diamond Comics. And if you go to Diamond Toys, Diamond Select Toys, and their website, I mean, they have a massive, massive portfolio of different toy lines and character groups. They've got the Marvel Cinematic Universe, X-Men, a lot of different Disney properties are under there. Obviously, they don't have a lot of the Star Wars toys because that's controlled by Hasbro. But if you look at some of these other toy lines that they have, there's a massive, massive portfolio of toys that Diamond Select Toys handles the distribution of. And, I don't know whether that's just distribution or if they actually are involved in the manufacture, but surely that given the fact that Diamond Comics Distributors has this subsidiary that deals with toy distribution, it seems like there's a natural fit to merge with AFA and figure out some kind of solution where if someone has like a brand new store exclusive, Spider-Man figure that they want to have graded immediately straight from the distributor, there seems to be a pretty natural fit now that AFA is underneath the Diamond Comics Distributors name brand, that you could figure out some kind of service there where people could say, yes, I want to buy that Spider-Man figure that's a one of 500 limited bust, and yes, I want to send it directly to AFA for grading and for encapsulation and protection. That to me is another avenue that beyond just expanding with different hubs. If you look at the hub and spoke with it, this is kind of what I'm talking about with where we are right now. Right now, all the grading companies are like this, right? This is the grading company. We are the customers in the gray box, and we send it to them, and then they send it back. We send it to them, we send it back, and everything gets swamped right here. All those toys, all those comics, all those trading cards, the 1 million+ trading cards that CGC has gotten in the last 15 months, and that's just for Pokemon and Magic the Gathering, by the way. That's not even including some of the other trading cards that they've gotten. So this is the current model, and they're getting swamped. Their warehouses are full of submissions that they haven't been able to tackle yet, and that's why it takes months and months and months for them to actually even process them. Whereas I think if they go to this model, a point-to-point model, a hub and spoke model, this is a point-to-point, this is hub and spoke, and where I think the future of graded collectibles needs to go. They need to have regional operations. They've got to expand beyond just having one central location, having that through, having 2 or 3 regional offices spread out throughout the U.S., even internationally, really, would go a long way, I think, towards improving turnaround times, certainly improving customer service and customers' opinions of your services right now. Because I've got a heartbeat on people who submit to all the different grading companies, whether it's comics or action figures, and I can tell you that in general right now, collectors are not that happy. It's just kind of a nightmare right now dealing with submitting items for grading, whatever it is. It could be anything. And my own personal experience backs that up. It's just a very antiquated system that they've got to figure out a different solution to streamline it and make it easier on the customer, and also, in all fairness, easier on the employees. Right now, they're just swamped and underwater, and they've got to figure out a better logistical process for getting the items in, grading them, and getting them back out. Because right now, it ain't working that well. It's just too much product and not enough people to process that product. So, but anyway, it's just some random thoughts that came to mind as I saw this. I don't know how I got from, reading about CGC having esports complexes now handling Pokemon card submissions all the way to like a business school hub and spoke versus point-to-point distribution model. But that's what happens when you're watching my channel. This is the kind of weird stuff that I think about. Anyway, if you're new to the channel and you like these kind of off-the-wall videos, welcome. I try to talk about the graded the graded collectibles industry as a whole, like I do in these types of videos, or just Star Wars items, more specifically in my market updates. If you like, but if you like it, I'd really appreciate a subscribe. You know, if you subscribe and give me a thumbs up. And to my existing subscribers and my Patreon supporters, as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll be back soon.